All right, welcome back, TDA After Dark. Justin, draft week is upon us, and Alabama might be in the business of breaking some more records for in terms of putting players in the NFL.
Well, yeah, it seems like almost every year a team is up for. You saw last year what LSU did with that remarkable team that they had, and they were able to put so many guys in the NFL draft. Alabama looks as if they could do that this upcoming draft with so many different guys possibly being first-round talent. And if you just look at that list, it is a lot of debates going on in terms of a guy like Mac Jones and the San Francisco 49ers. What are your thoughts about his situation in terms of his draft stock at the moment?
I mean, Jones ranges from anywhere from 3 to 15. I think that's pretty much where he's going to operate. You know, if you can ask 10 people, you're going to get 10 different answers of when you think he's going to go. I think he's going to go to San Francisco at 3, but you know, who knows? Because the only people who know are the people who are in the war room there in San Francisco. But you know, there's just a million debates that have been going on for the past 6 months. Mac Jones is where he's going to go. Devontae Smith's too small. Is Jalen Wallace still going to be healthy? But what's for certain is that Alabama is going to have multiple players picked in the first round, just like every other year. But this year in particular, they have a chance to possibly break the record set by Miami in 2001 by having, I think Miami had 6 players. Alabama might have 7. And what we can all agree right off the bat, they're going to have at least 4.
Yeah.
In term with Mac Jones, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Patrick Surtain, and I think Najee Harris too. Can we agree on that? Is he good? I know people don't like running backs. I don't know what your opinions are about running backs in the NFL, but I think he's a lock in there for the first round.
Yeah, I think he can. I think he can squeeze in there, but the running back situation is what it is, and when it comes to the NFL with that short lifespan that they have, carrying the football consistently in the National Football League, but I think he could squeeze in the late first round, which is where the best running backs are drafted in the NFL at this point.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Alabama has had to put a good track record, a pretty decent track record, I'd say, of running backs in the league. Yeah. Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Mark Ingram. Everyone likes to circle back to Trent Richardson. We get it. We understand. Yeah. But I think that was just a whole different situation in and of itself. But then after Harris, it kind of gets a little bit fuzzy on who that next guy will be. Some people are talking about Christian Barmore possibly getting in there. I mean, just what do you think of him as just a prospect in general from his time at Alabama?
I think he is a great prospect. I think he has a lot to prove because he was not consistently in the game basically at Alabama. He wasn't a consistent starter throughout his career at the university. So I think he has possibly a long career ahead of him in terms of not being on the field all the time. I think he has a lot on him in the future in terms of lasting in the NFL. But he is an amazing prospect in terms of a guy who can create disruption on the offensive line with his strength. He has a great amount of quickness, which comes to the forefront at times. He really played his best football towards the end of last season, including in the national championship game against Ohio State. So there's a lot to like about Christian Barmore, a guy who could possibly have benefited from coming back to the University of Alabama, but I think he still is in a good position heading into this NFL draft.
Yeah, in terms of Barmore, I mean, I'm not going to say that he's Quinton Williams because I don't think his impact was nearly as profound as him when he was actually in the game, but in terms of like someone who's like that, who's got like that sort of frame as that slippery and can get in between the offensive line, and just keep making plays. And I think the big draw to him is his pass rush because you just pass rush, putting pressure on the quarterback is so important in football, especially at the NFL, because those guys are too good. You can't give them this much time to throw. And a little bit the same thing between Barmore and Williams is that they don't have a lot of miles on their bodies. Well, I think Quinton Williams was a redshirt sophomore when he left, and I think Barmore was the same, or he might be a junior. I'm not exactly sure, but I think they're two very promising athletic defensive linemen I think based off potential alone, teams may just a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with the 32nd pick in the first round might take a chance on them. Who knows? But then when you look at 2 other guys who may possibly get in is Landon Dickerson. I've seen a couple mock drafts, and I think that's a little bit. I mean, I'm not doubting his talent at all or anything. It's just the injury and how close it was to the end of the year. And, you know, the NFL, I'm not saying he's not tough enough, but the NFL is like, that's a rough league. And I mean, Landon Dickerson has, unlike someone like Christian Barmore, he's got a lot of miles on himself.
Right. Well, with the NFL draft, they're going to basically nitpick everything. And going back to Barmore, do you think, as an NFL team, is it a concern that he was not consistent at Alabama in terms of being a consistent starter? When you go back and look at some of the great defensive linemen that have been in Tuscaloosa, they have consistently started, consistently made an impact. But with him, he was used sparsely because I think that was Alabama's plan for him. But it also may have had something to do with some other off the field issues at time, but also that depth at the defensive line position that Alabama had during his time.
Yes, there's definitely a point where he was Nick Saban's doghouse.
Yeah.
And, that's not a place you want to he got there when he was young, and that's not a place where you want to be. But, I mean, Alabama's always had a rotation on the defensive line. And for him to not always be out there, I don't think it's a huge deal. But honestly, like, any time where you look in some kids' past, like you said, they nitpick everything.
Yeah. And
they see, oh, wait, he got Nick Saban's nerve this one time, got buried at the depth chart. Is he going to do that again? Yeah. And, I mean, who knows? He ended up, but the way he ended the season as such an important piece to that defensive front, I think is just going to be I think that trumps the mistakes he probably made when he was younger. Yeah. In my opinion, at least. I don't know how you feel about it. But going back to Dickerson here, I do think I'm not saying it should, but I think the injury there may scare some teams off in the first round because there's a big gap between first round and second round money. But someone like an Alex Leatherwood might be able to jump in, especially with his wealth of experience that he's had over the years.
Yeah, and Alabama has consistently landed an offensive lineman in the first round, looking at Jonah Williams and also Jedrick Wills in recent draft classes. But when you look at this entire draft class for Alabama, basically over the last 2 years now, it looks sort of different from what we've seen from Alabama in the past. In the past, you used to see their running back, their linebacker, possibly a defensive back. But now you look at this, it's a quarterback. 2 years back to back.
Two back to back. I mean, this is unheard of. Putting quarterbacks in the draft. I mean, that just shows how much turnover there's been since Nick Saban first began here. I mean, how many defensive players went in the first round for Alabama over the years, especially a linebacker. There's not a linebacker that's going to go in the first round, but I mean, there's only one guaranteed defensive player going in the first round. That's Patrick Surtain. Yeah. So I think that just proves how much of a switch it's been, especially across all of the years.
And even at the wide receiver position, I think we saw it sparsely at Alabama. You saw guys like Amari Cooper, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, who were able to do that, but they were far and in between in terms of their time at Alabama. But now Alabama could be 2 years where they have had two wide receivers go in the first round of the NFL draft, and I think that is, I guess a product of what Nick Saban has preached throughout the last couple of years, trying to revamp the offense, trying to make it look more like everyone else in college football. So I just think it's interesting that just looking at that draft class and comparing it to those old draft classes that Alabama had that were filled with those defensive players.
I mean, it's just consistent evolution. It doesn't matter what era of football. He's just always going to be able to adapt. And I think there might be only be one team in the league without an Alabama player on it, and that's just a testament to the work that he's done. And all these guys, I mean, some will work out, some won't, but they all had we're talking about 7 players that could possibly have a chance of getting in the first round, and that's just a testament to the program and the hard work that they put in.
Yeah, and this draft and all of this, I know something that Nick Saban will be doing is basically, soon as a guy gets drafted, he's going to hit up a recruit that plays that guy's position. I think that is I guess speaks to his genius. He uses it on the recruiting trail, and he likes to call like right after that guy gets drafted. And I remember J.C. Latham, the 5-star offensive lineman who signed with Alabama in the 2021 recruiting class. He told me when I went down to IMG Academy this past season that soon as Jedrick Wills was drafted, Nick Saban was on the phone saying, "Yo, that's going to be you. Yo, we're going to have another guy this year, another guy next year, and you can be that guy down the line." And I think that is a perfect recruiting tool for Alabama. If they can have that amount of success, I'm pretty sure Nick Saban is going to use that on the recruiting trail, not next week, but right at that minute.
I mean, I would kind of like to know what player Nick Saban uses as an example to who not to be. Hey, don't be this guy who left and went into the 4th round. He's got a bunch of, across his years, he's got a bunch of different examples of greatness and maybe making some shiny decisions.
Yeah, we've seen Nick Saban refer to that in the past, and it's always I guess great for him to show guys that show guys that he basically knows what he's talking about, showing proof of guys who could have stayed and possibly boosted their draft stock, but instead they left. That is just part of the game that you play, especially when you're in your third year, deciding whether you want to go to the NFL or stay another year.
I mean, at this point, if you don't think that Nick Saban knows what he was talking about, I can't help you.